So you just bought your first Nikon D52, 53, 5500 or any kind of Nikon crop camera. And now you're like, what's the best budget lens that I can definitely use? See, when I didn't have a lot of money, all I had was this D5200 and its kit lens. But people often forget the power of what you can actually do with a kit lens. Like, I'm not saying the kit lens is the greatest thing to use, but if that's all you have, well then guess what? Use it. So this 18 to 55, 3.5 to 5.6 varying aperture kit lens is the one that usually comes with your Nikon. Means if you zoom in, the aperture goes up and less light goes in, making it darker when you zoom in and out, instead of being a constant aperture. It has autofocus and manual focus, but if you're a Nikon user, most likely you will be focusing on manually, because manual autofocus on a Nikon has horrible hunting and it's really loud. And surprisingly, the VR on this lens actually works really well if you plan to use this on a gimbal or on a Steadicam. It really works well and does its thing. I'd say one of the cons of using this kit lens is that yes, it might not be the sharpest, and since it's the 3.5 to 5.6 varying aperture lens, it's not the fastest lens that you can get, and it does start to show its weakness in the dark or low light situations, especially if you have something along the lines of a D5000 series. If I only had $300 to my name and I can only upgrade and pick one other lens for my Nikon DX body, I would definitely pick up the 35 1.8G prime lens by Nikon, aka the Nikkor Lens. This is a prime lens, meaning it's a fixed focal length and it shoots at a 1.8 aperture. In other words, it's really darn fast. As you can see here, the lens itself is very light and compact. And my only gripe about this lens is that it doesn't have any VR capabilities, meaning if you want to shoot videos with it, you will definitely have to use this on a gimbal or use a lot of warp in post. The lens itself is super sharp, and when I first started to freelance in videos, this was the lens that I used primarily, believe it or not. So the next lens that I picked up was the 70-300 VR zoom lens. Also, as the same as the kit lens, it has a 3.5 to 5.6 varying aperture. And the thing about this lens is that it can go on either a DX or full framed body. I would recommend this lens if you're on a budget and you want to shoot things like skylines, landscapes, videos, or photos. This is the lens that I would definitely recommend. It has its normal active modes as well as VR. But what I do recommend about this lens is you definitely want to use this on this tripod, because hand holding this lens is not an easy thing to do, because one, it is really heavy, and two, its barrel is very long. And my most recent lens purchase was to finally upgrade that 18 to 55 kit lens that I used, and I decided to go with the lens that you can't beat for its price. It's the 70 to 50 2.8 Sigma zoom lens, super sharp compared to the kit lens. And the only downside about this lens itself, I would say, is the optical stabilization, or the VR, is okay. The kit lens actually has better VR, but the thing that I want to pick up about this lens is it's pretty much a full step faster than the kit lens, and on top of that, it's a constant aperture. So those are my recommended lenses for Nikon for budget users. I know there's other glass out there for crop bodies, whether that's Nikon or Canon, but you would have to pay over $1,000 for all the ones that I mentioned, but better versions of. The The ones that I mentioned, you can actually get them for under $400 and even cheaper if you found them used on a third-party site. Never let money be an issue to creating content online. Trust me, work with what you have because those are the best tools, and once you learn and master those tools and you're able to multiply whatever income that you make, then maybe look into finding more pricier lens. But those are my budget recommended lens that you should use for your Nikon body, and the same also applies for the variation of the Canon as well.